Just remember, since this is new information, that you do need to be taking notes. So either have a notebook or have pieces of paper and then put it in a folder or a binder or somewhere. Keep yourself at least as organized as you can in this time so that you can reference back to your notes still in future lessons. So this is 9-2, where you're going to solve quadratic equations with inverses. Inverses just mean the same as opposites. And we've talked about these before. You know a lot of these inverses. So when I ask you what's the inverse of adding, you know the inverse of adding. How do you get rid of adding? You get rid of it with subtracting. So what about multiplying? How do you get rid of multiplying? Dividing. The inverse or the opposite of dividing? Multiplying. What about subtracting? Is adding. Now here are new ones. These four we've talked about before, and you've talked about for probably multiple years, but these two are new ones. Squaring. So if I were to have x squared equals 16, how would you get rid of this squared? You get rid of squaring with square rooting. So you would square root both sides, which that symbol is this symbol that looks like kind of like a check mark and then continue the line. This is a square root symbol. So then what's the opposite of square rooting? Is squaring. So these are all of your inverses. We have solved using inverses before, like with our linear equations. For example, if we had 3x plus 5 equals 20, this is a linear equation. Remember from 8-1, and before that also, linears have an exponent of 1. Okay, so this is linear. So you have solved this since back in Unit 2. Well, really, since middle school, you have solved these equations. If you needed to, you drew your line down the equal sign. You had plus 5, so the inverse of adding 5 is subtracting 5. Gives you 3x, 5 minus 5 is 0, equals 20 minus 5 is 15. Then you had 3x, which remember is the same as 3 times x, so the inverse of multiplying is dividing. 3 divided by 3 is 1, so it's gone. X equals 15 divided by 3 is 5. And there you solved your equation using inverses. So that is not anything new. When we're solving our quadratics, we're pretty much doing the same steps. Now I want to remind you that a quadratic means x squared is somewhere in your equation. In a quadratic, you have to have a squared, okay? So we do a lot of the same steps, and we can use the phrase SADMEP to know what order to complete our inverses in. I want you to look at SADMEP. But then I want you to look at it in reverse order, meaning look at it backwards. P-E-M-D-A-S. And now say that out loud. PEMDAS. So we are going to be using SADMEP, which is the reverse of PEMDAS. So this is the order that you're going to do your solving. Keep in mind that just like with PEMDAS, subtracting and adding are grouped together. You would do them in the same steps. Same with your division and your multiplication. You would do those in the same steps. Remember that E stands for your exponent, so this is where your squares come in place. We just talked about those. Your squares, your opposite would be square rooting. And then your P stands for parentheses, which we'll see some examples with those also. So there is one new thing with quadratics when we solve. Because we have this squared, I have an equation such as x squared equals 4. So because I have this squared, it means some number times itself. So that means when you're square rooting, the opposite of squaring is square rooting. So that gives me my square root, my squared cancel, x equals the square root of 4. So when you're square rooting, that means you're looking for a number times itself gives you this answer. So some number times itself gives you 4. So I'm looking for what number times itself equals 4. I want you to think about that. Go to Desmos, use a calculator if you need to, take some time, pause this video, figure out what number times itself gives you 4. Hopefully you thought your answer was 2. Because 2 times 2 equals 4. But what if I told you there was another answer also? There was a second answer. There's some other number times itself that gives you 4, besides 2 times 2 equaling 4. So I want you to take some time to think about what other number multiplied by itself also gives you positive 4. Once again, pause the video, go to Desmos, try some things out with a calculator, and then come back. The other answer is negative 2, because negative 2 times negative 2 is positive 4. So this means when I had x squared equals 4, I'm going to square root both sides to get rid of my squared. I would say x equals 2 or x equals negative 2, because 2 squared is 4 and negative 2 squared is 4. So I get 2 answers. So when we take the square root of a number, we get 2 answers. Now I want to show you why that is. Let's talk about our linears real quick. The one we just solved. Remember that a linear has an exponent of 1. And how many answers did you get? Just 1. Over here, our quadratics, look at our exponent. What's our exponent? 2. And how many answers did we get? We got 2 answers. So quadratics have an exponent of 2 and they give you 2 answers. Linears have an exponent of 1 and they give you 1 answer. Okay? So now let's do some solving. Use your inverses. We'll start with some easy ones. If you do need a calculator, if you need Desmos, please make sure you are doing that. When you are on Desmos, down here, little keyboard, right next to the ABC button is your square root. Now when you do the square root of 4, it comes up as just 2. It doesn't give you the negative answer. You just need to remember that there are 2 answers. The one it gives you and the negative version of it. Okay? So let's start out with our first one. X squared equals 25. So the only thing we need to do is get rid of this squared by square rooting. X equals what number times itself gives you 25? Or you can come back into Desmos and do square root of 25, and you get 5. Or x equals negative 5. You should have 2 answers. Next one, b squared equals 100. So you're going to square root to get rid of your squared. b equals what number times itself gives you 100? Or go back to Desmos and type in the square root of 100. You get 10. So b equals 10 or b equals negative 10. You get your 2 answers. All right, last one. We have t squared equals 20. So we're going to square root both sides. The square root gets rid of the squared. T equals square root of 20. Now, if you try and tell me that the square root of 20 is 10, you need to stop and think about that, because 10 times 10 is not 20. 10 times 10 is 100. The square root of 20, we go back to Desmos, is some decimal. Okay? So it does say back up here, round to the nearest hundredth if necessary. Remember, hundredths is 2 decimal places. So 4.47. This 2 does not make it round up, so just 4.47. Or t equals negative 4.47. Your two answers. Okay? Now let's move on to a little bit harder ones, a couple more steps to have to do. Remember that we're going to use SAD map, so do addition or subtraction first, then multiplication or division, then your exponents, and then your parentheses. We're going to still round to the nearest hundredth if necessary. So when I look at this, I have 2p squared equals 18. If I'm using SAD map, I look, do I have any addition or subtraction? No, I do not. Do I have any multiplication or division? Yes, I do. I have 2 times p squared. So you need to get rid of that with dividing both sides by 2. Gives you p squared equals 18 divided by 2 is 9. Now we're back to our very simple last step that we need to do. We have a squared. You get rid of your squared by square rooting. Square root both sides. P equals, what's the square root of 9? Either Desmos or what number times itself gives you 9. That is 3. Or when you square root, you get your other answer, negative 3. Next one, k squared plus 6 equals 31. You would start with any addition or subtraction. We have plus 6, so you need to minus 6 on both sides. K squared, 6 minus 6 is gone, equals 31 minus 6, 25. Your next thing would be to look for multiplication and division, but we don't have any. Next would be your exponents, which we do have our squared, so we need to square root both sides. So k equals, we've just talked about, the square root of 25 is 5, or k equals negative 5. Two answers. Next one. It might help you to draw your line through your equal sign if you need to. We've got negative 2x squared plus 4 equals negative 14. Start out, SAD map says to get rid of addition or subtraction first. So we have plus 4, so we need to subtract 4 from both sides. So negative 2x squared equals negative 14 minus 14 is negative 18. Now we have negative 2x squared equals negative 18. After addition or subtraction, you get rid of multiplication and division. We have times, negative 2 times x squared, so we need to divide by negative 2 on both sides. Gives you x squared equals negative 18 divided by negative 2 is 9. After multiplication and division, you get rid of your exponents. You have 2, so you need to square root since you have the squared. We talked about the square root of 9 is 3, or x equals negative 3. Two answers. All right, last one. Let's skip this one. Let's go to the next one. Last one. 5b squared plus 2 equals 13. SAD map says get rid of addition or subtraction first. You should add 2 because you have subtracting 2. Gives you 5b squared equals 15. After addition or subtraction, get rid of multiplication or division. We have times 5. So divided by 5. B squared equals 3.